Number 9. Secret door in the Sphinx. For centuries now, Egypt's Great Pyramids and Sphinx of Giza have frequently fallen under the spotlight for their suspected secret chambers, among other mysterious features, including hopeful theories about lost treasure. These rumors are to credit for the ongoing interest among archaeologists in getting to the bottom of any possible truths behind the tales. In August of 2019, the 4,500-year-old Great Sphinx made headlines yet again, when reputed British historian Dr. Bettany Hughes claimed that there are 2 hidden chambers beneath the famous yet little understood monument that are worth excavating for their potential loot, and for the secrets they may reveal about ancient Egypt. Speaking with The Sun, Dr. Hughes explained that for generations, ancient Egyptians feared and respected the Sphinx, believing it had supernatural powers. Now, she says, archaeologists are investigating the statue based on suspicions that it may sit atop an ancient network of tunnels and chambers. At the base of the Sphinx, near its tail, there's a small, deep hole, which is typically kept hidden from public view. This hole could lead to the larger chamber that some researchers believe is beneath the monument. Although researchers have yet to confirm any suspicions, Dr. Hughes believes that the tunnels below the Sphinx could be linked to a nearby pyramid, where the pharaoh Khufu is entombed. But she admits nobody knows for sure, and it's precisely the mystery researchers are trying to solve. Number 8. Crooked Forest. In 1930, when the village of Nowe Czarnowo in modern-day West Pomerania, Poland, was part of the German province of Pomerania, somebody planted 400 pine trees that grew peculiarly pointed northward and curved back upright. Nobody knows why the entire grove appears to be sharply bent 90 degrees sideways. The bizarrely shaped trees are otherwise healthy, growing up to 50 feet or 15 meters tall. Some have theorized that a unique gravitational pull in the area is responsible for reshaping them. But science proved long ago that gravity pulls downwards rather than at an angle, as Discovery points out on its website. Another theory suggests that heavy snowfall caused the trees to bend when they were sprouting, but fails to explain why this never happened to other vegetation in the region. The direction of the wood's grain makes it very tough, leading some to speculate that the trees were deliberately grown at an angle for building wooden wheels. This falls in line with the most commonly accepted theory that farmers manipulated the trees. Based on where they're angled, this would have been done when they were 7 to 10 years old. Anyone who may have an answer to the mystery is long gone from the town, which was largely abandoned at the end of World War II and remained that way until the 1970s. Number 7. Potomsky Crater. The Potomsky Crater is a peculiar rock formation in southeastern Siberia's Irkutsk region. Made from shattered limestone blocks, it stands roughly 130 feet or about 40 meters tall, and has a base diameter of 520 feet or 160 meters. At the top is a ring-shaped cone with a smaller 39-foot-tall, about 12-meter mound in the center. The crater's origins have been a mystery ever since its discovery in 1949 by Russian geologist Vadim Korpakov. With an estimated age of just 300 to 350 years old, theories abound, including the possibilities of meteorite, volcanic, or gaseous activity forming the crater, as well as possible radioactivity, as evidenced by trees nearby that show signs of accelerated growth. As of 2010, the general consensus was that the Potomsky Crater has geological origins, although some scientists still believe it's meteoric in nature. No solid argument for a meteoric theory has been offered as of yet, and most modern experts consider it historically valuable at best. Some of the more imaginative theories connect the site with a suspected hidden nuclear plant, or a buried UFO containing nuclear fuel. But no asteroid-like materials or metal have been discovered in or around the crater, making these possibilities highly unlikely. Recent research suggests that perhaps a gas volcano formed by the underground release of hydrogen and other fluids caused the trees near the crater to grow abnormally fast. Speaking with the Siberian Times, researcher Alexander Pospiev admitted that scientists don't yet know how the Potomsky Crater formed, but that it's definitely of earthly origin. Number 6. Marfa Lights. Near US Route 67, outside the West Texas town of Marfa, mysterious orbs of light glow in the desert at night, leading to generations of speculation about paranormal phenomena and a suspected extraterrestrial presence. Eyewitnesses have claimed that the lights are basketball-sized and appear in various colors, including white, blue, and yellow and red, according to Live Science. They move in ways that distinguish them from vehicle headlights or the lights of nearby ranches, often hovering, twinkling, merging, dividing, flickering, and ascending towards the sky. The Marfa lights are seemingly unpredictable, occurring in various types of weather. They're spotted around a dozen times every year, and nobody knows for sure what they are. The first known eyewitness accounts of the Marfa lights dates back to 1883. But when a cowhand named Robert Reed Ellison saw them and assumed they were Apache fires. But no evidence of campfires was found in the area where the lights were seen. During World War II, Army pilots stationed nearby tried to track down the source of the Marfa lights, but had no luck. According to local Native American beliefs, the lights represent fallen stars. Others attribute them to aliens from outer space and the ghosts of Spanish conquistadors. A study by physics students from the University of Texas at Dallas found that the lights could be an atmospheric reflection of headlights and campfires, but the findings were inconclusive, leaving the topic open for debate. It's possible that the phenomenon is an optical illusion consisting of light refractions caused by layers of air at different temperatures. Known as a fata morgana or a superior mirage, this happens when warm air rests above a layer of cooler air. The Marfa lights could also be caused by gases like phosphine and methane, which also comprise swamp gas and sometimes ignite when they interact with oxygen. This glowing phenomenon is sometimes called will-o'-the-wisp or fool's fire. For now, there's no solid evidence of what the Marfa lights are, making your guess as good as anyone else's. Have you ever seen anything weird in the sky? Did you figure out what it was? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to Talltanic and let us know what videos you'd like to see in the comments below. Number 5. Racetrack Playa. In Death Valley National Park, there's a lake bed sitting 3,714 feet, about 1,130 meters above sea level, known as the Racetrack Playa. Measuring 2.8 miles, about 4.5 kilometers long, by 1.3 miles, or 2.1 kilometers wide. It's so flat that the northern end is only an inch and a half, about 3.5 centimeters, higher than the southern end. Most of the time, the Racetrack Playa is dry. But when it rains heavily, the basin it's situated in fills up with water and washes down from the surrounding mountains, forming a shallow lake. Known as an endorheic lake, it's a temporary body of water that quickly evaporates under the hot Southern California sun, leaving behind a soft layer of mud that dries and cracks into octagonal shapes. With the area only receiving a few inches of rainfall every year, the playa is almost always dry. When the lake bed is covered in soft mud, the rocks along its floor move, leaving a trail in the mud behind them. Some of them weigh hundreds of pounds, begging the question of how and why they slowly scuttle along, seemingly for no reason. One prevailing theory over the years is that strong winds push the rocks against the flat ground. This makes sense, since they move parallel to the prevailing winds, which blow from the southwest to the northeast. But even strong winds usually can't push a rock that weighs hundreds of pounds, and which is sitting inches deep in the mud, suggesting there are other factors at play. In 2013, a 3-inch deep lake filled the playa and froze over. During that time, researchers observed rocks actively moving across the ground, with some traveling over 700 feet or about 215 meters. The scientists found that the phenomenon occurs when ice sheets measuring a few millimeters thick begin to melt, creating opportune conditions for light winds to push the rocks along while they're embedded in the ice, which floats on a thin layer of water. Number 4. Oregon Vortex. Located along Sardine Creek in Gold Hill, Oregon, the Oregon Vortex opened in 1930 as a roadside attraction, advertising itself as a spherical field of force, half above the ground and half below the ground. In more basic terms, things seem to move and lean in the wrong direction, with water flowing uphill, brooms standing on end, and people's height unexplainably changing. Native Americans refer to the site as Forbidden Ground, and reportedly avoided going there, and their horses allegedly refused to go there, stopping and changing directions once they realized they were near. Between the 1920s and 1959, Scottish geologist and engineer John Lister conducted thousands of experiments at the Oregon Vortex. And he is also who opened and ran it as an attraction. The site's advertisement as a spherical force field is based on Lister's theory about what causes the strange going-ons there. He believes that his alleged field of force measures a little less than 165 feet, about 50 meters, in diameter. Today, the owner and proprietors continue to sell the Oregon Vortex as a site of possible paranormal phenomena. A more plausible explanation is that people who visit experience an optical illusion known as a gravity hill, which is when a slight downhill slope appears to be uphill due to the layout of its surroundings. In 2012, the Sci-Fi Channel show Fact or Faked: Paranormal Files investigated the Oregon Vortex and concluded that all the bizarre effects people experience there are indeed probably the products of optical illusions. But the show's findings were admittedly inconclusive, leaving the site's strange happenings a mystery for now. Number 3. Gungi Wamp. Located in a forest less than an hour inside of New Haven, Connecticut, the Gungi Wamp site contains evidence of hundreds or even thousands of years of human occupation. Characterized by multiple stone chambers, rock piles, rings of stones, and mysterious carvings, the ancient settlement is filled with a confusing mixture of Native American and colonial artifacts, with the oldest finds dating as far back as 2000 BCE. Among the most notable finds at Gungi Wamp are a stone chamber featuring the astronomical alignment of the equinoxes and a formation of large quarried stones arranged in 2 concentric circles. There are also multiple stone chambers that archaeologists believe were root cellars, but truthfully do not know the purpose of. Other discoveries include Native American pottery fragments and arrowheads, as well as colonial-era china, buttons, coins, tobacco pipes, glass bottle and window fragments, bricks, and animal bones. None of these artifacts are helpful in determining what the stone chambers were used for. On the surface, it's clear that the 100-acre or about 40 hectare site was repurposed multiple times throughout its history. But archaeologists have struggled to make sense of the muddled mess of structures and artifacts or put together a precise timeline or order to Gungi Wamp's occupation. One of the more far-flung theories, put forth by mostly non-academic investigators, is that the settlement is of pre-Columbian Celtic origins and was built in the 6th century by Christian monks fleeing persecution in Europe. But no evidence points towards this as a likely possibility, despite the discovery in Newfoundland, Canada in recent years of pre-Columbian Norse populations in North America. Some people even believe that there are alien connections to Gungi Wamp, citing the alleged presence of energy vortexes at the site, based on occasional detectable spikes in electromagnetic activity, which geologists more convincingly attribute to the quartz, granite, and magnite rocks at the site. But, in all fairness, the mysteries surrounding Gungi Wamp and modern scholars' failure to come up with a more comprehensive explanation of its history open the door to these types of beliefs. Number 2. Amada Muru. While exploring the Peruvian countryside near the Bolivian border during the early 1990s, mountaineering guide José Luis Delgado Mamani found an abandoned stone carving bearing a smooth, flat surface and 6.5 foot tall, about 2 meters, T-shaped alcove. Situated near Lake Titicaca, the roughly 23-foot or 7-meter stone resembles a portal. It's known to be an abandoned Incan construction project, but its purpose is unknown. Known as Amada Muru and nicknamed Puerta de Hayamarca, or Gate of the Gods, the structure is the subject of local folklore, claiming that people have disappeared through its doorway. Stories also tell of strange sights near the portal, including tall men accompanied by glowing balls of lights walking through the doorway, according to Atlas Obscura. But the website admits that these tales could be embellished by paranormal fanatics like Jerry Willis, who claimed that he traveled through the portal and that photos of people goofing off near the structure do little to add to its mystique. Conspiracy theorists have suggested that Amada Muru is a multi-dimensional doorway created by aliens. And one story alleges that an Incan priest used a golden disc that fell from the sky to open the door. Unsurprisingly, none of these claims are backed by credible evidence. Number 1. Hesterlin Lights. For over a century, bizarre, flashing balls of light have been appearing in rural central Norway's Hesterlin Valley. Known as the Hesterlin Lights or the Hesterlin phenomenon, the bright white, yellow, and red lights are of unknown origin. They appear day and night, both above and below the horizon, and last anywhere from a few seconds to a few hours. Spectators have observed the lights moving slowly and with enormous speed, as well as hovering. People have also reported seeing metallic objects in the sky during the daytime, as well as bright blue flashes that last no longer than the blink of an eye, giving rise to rumors about UFOs and aliens from outer space. There have been periods of unusually high activity, including during the 1980s when the lights appeared as much as 20 times per week. Since then, the number of annual sightings has dwindled to fewer than 20. The phenomenon has attracted the attention of scientists and conspiracy theorists, but both have failed to determine what it is or what causes it. One theory put forth in 2014 suggests that metallic minerals interact with a sulfurous river, creating a natural battery of sorts that illuminates the sky. The researchers replicated this effect in an experiment, lending potential credibility to their suspicions. A type of plasma could be responsible for the Hesterlin Lights, according to some experts, while others believe the phenomenon is a type of lightning. But there are pitfalls to each hypothesis. For one, plasmas require incredibly hot temperatures to form, and the lights seem to be cool. The lights also do not occur during lightning or leave scorch marks on the ground, challenging the idea that they are a type of lightning. Other theories include the possibility that the valley's shape, climate, geology, and high winds generate static electricity, or that radioactivity or decaying radon in the atmosphere are responsible for the lights. Whatever the case, more research is necessary before the scientific community can solve the mystery.
The Giraffe Site. The Giraffe Site in Iran is one of the most incredible archaeological discoveries ever made in the country. This place was first exposed thanks to flooding that happened back in the year 2001. It dates back to the Bronze Age, when it was once an expensive urban settlement built by a previously unknown civilization. The site is so old that experts believe it could actually be the true cradle of civilization and the first major societal hub, even predating the emergence of both Sumer and Mesopotamia. The excavated area has now been named Konar Sandal. It's not clear exactly who lived in the settlement or what they did. Archaeologists have uncovered a pair of huge burial mounds and a mysterious stone structure that they think may have been used for some kind of religious ceremony. Digging deeper in the soil, archaeologists also came across hidden buildings and small structures that may have comprised a subterranean living environment. Artifacts were also discovered here, including jewelry and ceramics. It's obvious the people here were pretty advanced in both technology and construction. It's also possible that whoever lived here shared an ancestry with Mesopotamia, since they were only separated by about 600 miles. 9. Alexandria Treasure Trove. In Alexandria, treasure from the ancient past has been unearthed thanks to a new riverfront development project. I'm talking about Alexandria, Virginia, not the city of Alexandria in Egypt. During the construction of the Robinson Landing community, artifacts were found dating all the way back to the conception of Alexandria in the year 1749. According to Eleanor Breen, a city archaeologist associated with the project, She described it as peeling back layers of time. The workers found foundation after foundation of old buildings that once stood proudly on Alexandria's shoreline. They also discovered the remains of wharfs, bulkheads, and even rotted ships. But how did all these features survive the passing of time? Well, in the 1940s, warehouses were built on concrete slabs over the top of these precious ruins. This helped to preserve the history buried beneath it all. At least 3 ship hulls were taken out of the earth. In total, a whopping 150,000 artifacts were excavated, most of them giving a shocking glimpse into the everyday life of settlers in the 18th century, such as teapots, wine bottles, and even food scraps. If you walk around Robinson Landing today, you can see old foundation stones made into raised planter walls, granite lines, and cobblestones that document the past of the shoreline. Some of these artifacts will go on display at museums when the archaeologists are done working on them. Everyone will be able to see them and engage with the beautiful history of Alexandria. 8. Quipu of Caral. Archaeologists have discovered a mysterious artifact at the location of the oldest known city in the Americas. The city is called Caral, and it dates back 5,000 years to the first complex civilization in South America. The artifact discovered is known as a Quipu, and it's a type of device made of fabric knots and strings which ancient people used to convey information. If it sounds confusing, that's because it is. Today we have cell phones. Back then they had knots and strings. It is amazing what a few thousand years can do, right? Anyways, a Quipu was like a notebook, but you had to know how to read the knots. The Inca used them starting at around 650 AD, but the people at Caral were using them much earlier than that. According to archaeologist Ruth Shady, the Quipu dates back to the original construction of Caral. She also says it's the oldest of its kind and that it shows a very unique system of writing that would go on to last 4,500 years until the arrival of the Spanish settlers. Just what exactly is this object though? It's a network of brown cotton strings bound with thin sticks and strange fiber balls of varying size. All these individual features are wrapped inside of nets and reed baskets, almost like an extremely complicated dream catcher. It could be used to record dates, different accounts, certain statistics, and even simple ideas. Do you think you could use a Quipu to communicate with your friends and family today? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 7. The Brother of Jesus Inscription. One of the most controversial archaeological discoveries ever made is known as the James Ossuary. It's a bone box, a simple crate made from limestone that has a very specific inscription on it. Written in Aramaic is, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. This is controversial for obvious reasons. First of all, if real, the inscription would be the earliest mention of Jesus anywhere. It would also suggest the box once held the bones of Jesus' brother. Wait a minute, Jesus had a brother? This was such an incredibly shocking discovery when it was made back in the early 2000s. It was so shocking that authentication was understandably necessary. The box itself was dated back to the 1st century AD. There's no doubt that the bone box is old, very, very old. The antiquity of the 20-inch long James ossuary itself is not in question. It does indeed date back to a period when the practice of ossulegium, which is the collection of the bones of a deceased person, was prevalent among the Jewish population. It was the inscription that really needed to be scrutinized though, and during a trial that went on for 7 years, professionals from all over the world tried to figure out if it was a forgery or not. The issue was that 2 renowned paleographers confirmed that the inscription was real, but then over the course of the trial, which included 138 witnesses and 400 exhibits, it came to be known that there was a forgery ring involved in the discovery who had actually faked the inscription. The bone box is definitely real, but nobody wrote anything about Jesus on it. It was all a very, very elaborate hoax. It was the greatest forgery of the century. But what would the reasoning behind it be? Just to mess with people's heads? 6. Nebra Sky Disc. The Nebra Sky Disc is the oldest representation of an astronomical phenomenon. It was discovered back in the year 1999 by Henry Westphal while he was out hunting for treasure with one of his good friends in Germany. The disc was discovered with a pair of bronze swords, 2 hatchets, a spiral bracelet, and a chisel. It was dated back to 1600 BC originally, though researchers believe it could have been made even earlier than that, perhaps in the Bronze Age. This is such an important artifact that it has been included in the UNESCO Memory of the World Register as one of the most important finds of the 20th century. But what exactly was the sky disc used for? It is a bronze disc about a foot in diameter, inlaid with gold. The disc shows the sun and the moon, along with the cluster of 7 stars known as the Pleiades. It's so impressive because never before had someone created an astrological representation quite like it. The artist had probably been observing the heavens at night from atop the Middelburg mountain, near the town of Nebra, where the artifact was found. 5. Roman estate. Something horrible happened in the United Kingdom. It all began with the amazing discovery of a Roman estate and bathhouse in the rural community of Eastfield. No one had any idea that it was there. Archaeologists couldn't believe their luck. According to Historic England, it was the most important Roman discovery of the last 10 years. The estate was found ahead of a new construction project for a housing development. Archaeologists were called in to survey the area and were shocked when they found the remains of the large complex. So far, this site is about the size of 2 tennis courts combined. It was likely an impressive estate used by someone of high standing during the Roman occupation of England roughly 2,000 years ago. But here's the horrible part. Just after the discovery was made and reported in local news, a group of vandals trespassed on the site one night under the cover of darkness. These vandals brought with them metal detectors, probably hoping to discover some priceless artifacts. They didn't completely ruin the estate, but they did damage many of the important structures. Keith Emmerich, Inspector of Ancient Monuments at Historic England, told the BBC, "We are aware of a number of incidents of illegal activity at the site of the newly discovered Roman building at Eastfield over the past week. As the archaeological potential of the area has been publicly known for some time, it is a hotspot for illegal metal detecting, also known as night hawking. Who knows what else could have been uncovered before the hoodlums snuck in and stole stuff." 4. Spatla. The archaeological site of Spatla in Tunisia is home to the ruins of the ancient Roman city of Sufatula. Here you will find the best preserved Roman temples anywhere in all of Tunisia. It is an impressive site for a few different reasons. Mainly that the city was founded under the reign of Emperor Vespasian of Rome and then stuck in the middle of several big confrontations, including fighting between the Byzantines and the Arabs in the year 647. It was also the base that was used later on for the Muslim conquest, which pushed its way into Europe. There are still many incredible finds being made here all the time, from a rare Roman bath to an exceptional baptistry basin found in the Basilica of Vitalis, crafted in the 5th century and decorated with a beautiful fish mosaic. Would you like to see this in person? Let us know in the comment section down below. 3. The Serpent Staff. One of the coolest artifacts ever was just discovered, thanks to archaeologists working with the University of Turku and the Finnish Heritage Agency. At a prehistoric site in the southwest of Finland, first discovered by people digging a ditch in the 1950s, an ancient serpent staff that may have held magical powers was excavated in 2019. How cool is that? Because of the state of the soil, the wooden staff has been kept perfectly preserved for about 4,400 long years. The staff measures about 3 feet long and was sculpted to look like a slithering serpent. From what archaeologists can tell, it was probably used during the Stone Age by a shaman who practiced extremely mysterious rituals. Archaeologists also say it's unlike anything else ever found in Europe, dating back to the Neolithic times. Other than a few snakes depicted in cave art, this is the oldest and most obvious representation of a snake. According to Dr. Antti Lähelma from the University of Helsinki, there was a distinct connection between these ancient people and serpents. Snakes almost always had a role in shamanistic activities. However, it's impossible to say what exactly these activities were. Lead author of this study, Dr. Satu Koivisto, principal investigator of the Arven Suo research from the University of Turku, said, "Well-preserved finds from wetlands help our understanding of ancient peoples and the landscape where they performed both mundane and sacred activities." Along with the magical staff, archaeologists found the remains of unknown structures, scraps of fishing equipment, and early wooden utensils. These all came from an ancient culture who lived in the wetlands, fishing for their food, and participating in bizarre rituals. 2. Mysterious Roman sarcophagus. Archaeologists have uncovered a very strange sarcophagus in England. It happened during renovations at the historical Sydney Gardens in the old Roman city of Bath. A group of archaeologists discovered a stone sarcophagus buried underneath the dirt of the world-famous gardens. It has been dated all the way back to when England was at the farthest extent of the Roman Empire, roughly 2,000 years ago. The archaeologists also discovered a pair of skeletons inside the single coffin. Both skeletons faced north, indicating that they were probably part of a pagan burial. They were also found with the partial skeleton of an unknown person entombed at their feet, possibly their child. While nothing specific is really known about these ancient buried people, it is fascinating to know that there are still undiscovered sarcophagi hidden literally underneath our very feet in gardens just waiting to be uncovered. Do you think something else is hidden there waiting to be uncovered? If so, what do you think it is? 1. Trundholm Sun Chariot. The Trundholm Sun Chariot is a unique Nordic artifact discovered in Denmark and dating back to the earliest part of the Bronze Age, around 1400 BC. It was discovered by a farmer in 1902 who was plowing a peat bog. He spotted the bronze horse lying in the mud and thought it was nothing but an old child's toy. So he gave it to his kids. It wasn't until much later that the National Museum of Denmark got involved to properly preserve the artifact. Then, approximately 96 years after the horse was discovered, archaeologists with metal detectors went back to the original site and found 21 more pieces of the Sun Chariot, putting it together to create an impressive relic, the horse joined to a chariot with wheels, axles, and spokes. It turned out to be a very impressive find. This is an important artifact because it is so far the best example of Scandinavian Bronze Age religion. The relic shows the passage of the sun as it moves through the light of heaven and the grim darkness of the underworld. There are motifs displaying the same thing throughout Scandinavia, usually carved into rocks. In Nordic mythology, the sun goddess is Sol. She travels through the sky in her chariot, keeping all life on Earth from plunging into darkness.
Immediate effects. In the days and hours leading up to an eruption of Mount Vesuvius, the surrounding region would likely experience tremors and earthquakes, much like the residents of Pompeii did on that fateful day. An eruption as strong or possibly stronger than the one that destroyed Pompeii would shoot a plume of volcanic material at least 20 miles into the sky, causing rock and ash to rain down at over 100 miles per hour. In many places, the sky would go dark, and there would be an initial intense burst of heat. When Pompeii was swallowed by ash, there was a 900-degree Fahrenheit heat wave. Around 80 people were killed instantly by the extreme thermal shock, and this would certainly be the case today for anyone in the heat wave's path. Unfortunate residents who failed to evacuate on time would get crushed and buried by the debris, which would fall too quickly for someone to escape on foot. The extent of the damage caused by an eruption would depend not only on the size of the explosion itself, but the weather conditions during the disaster. High winds would cause the ash and pumice to travel further away from the volcano, expanding the impacted region. 9. Displacement and death. Scientists at the Vesuvius Observatory monitored the volcano's seismic activity 24/7 so that they could give people as much warning as possible to evacuate in the event of an impending eruption. At least 18 towns are in the so-called red zone, which is defined by a 9-mile radius around the volcano. The Italian government's emergency evacuation plan is designed to relocate at least 600,000 people who live in the most at-risk areas to safety within 72 hours. In 2018, officials announced that red zone residents would be shuttled to Sardinia by boat, and that Pompeii's mayor, Pietro Amatrano, was working with Sardinian authorities to develop a comprehensive evacuation procedure. Unfortunately, it's unlikely that everyone would survive. Things often go wrong, or at least don't go as planned amid widespread chaos. Naturally, some people would be hesitant to evacuate, as this is a common problem in the face of an oncoming disaster, and there could be logistical challenges to moving hundreds of thousands of people in such a short time. According to CBC News, some experts estimate that as many as 10,000 people would die if Vesuvius erupted at full magnitude. There would likely be some stranded survivors in imminent need of rescue. Their fate would depend largely on the government's response readiness and its capacity to aid the amount of people waiting to be taken out of harm's way. Efforts are being made to reduce the population living within the volcano's danger zone. Authorities are offering residents as much as $46,000 to move away and are destroying illegally constructed buildings. And there's a national park being established around Vesuvius to stop new homes from being built. 8. Failed evacuation. A successful evacuation of the red zone would require officials to act diligently and with competence. Authorities might fail to take warnings of an impending eruption seriously, perhaps writing these cautions off as false alarms. It might sound crazy to underestimate the life-threatening dangers of Mount Vesuvius, especially after history has proven how quickly and easily the volcano can destroy entire towns and thousands of lives. But back in 1984, around 40,000 residents were evacuated from the city of Pozzuoli and temporarily resettled in resort towns following seismic events in the nearby Campi Flegrei caldera. No eruption happened, which is undoubtedly a good thing, but it's impossible to avoid chaos while relocating tens or hundreds of thousands of people. Politicians and officials are likely to be extremely cautious or perhaps even hesitant about moving forward with the decision to evacuate people en masse. An unnecessary evacuation could destroy a leader's image or even their entire career, as Vesuvius Observatory Research Director Giovanni Macedonio told USA Today in 2003. For this reason, it's realistic to consider the possibility that a person in a position of authority would delay an evacuation, resulting in needless tragedies. Would you live near a volcano knowing it could erupt any day? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 7. Villages would be wiped off the map. Depending on the size of an eruption, Mount Vesuvius could easily wipe villages and small cities off the map completely, including Naples, potentially displacing 3 million or more people who live in the area surrounding the volcano. History has already proven that the effects of an eruption could be even farther reaching than the one that buried Pompeii and nearby Herculaneum in ash in 79 AD. Around 3,800 years ago, an eruption at least twice as strong happened, covering the area that includes modern-day Naples. Known as the Avellino eruption, it turned the region into a barren, uninhabitable wasteland for at least 200 years, according to a Live Science article detailing a groundbreaking study from 2006. The research provided scientists with the first solid evidence that the blast extended so far. Study leader Michael Sheridan from the University of Buffalo reported that over 3 feet of pumice and hot ash rained down as far as 9 miles away. Located roughly 6 miles from Vesuvius, Naples falls well within that zone. Archaeological evidence shows that the lesser-known Avellino eruption devastated human and animal lives. At Nola, a prehistoric village located 9 miles from the volcano, archaeologists found dog skeletons and the remains of 9 pregnant goats. They also discovered the skeletons of a man and a woman who suffocated to death while trying to escape and being buried in debris. Footprints found in volcanic ash indicate that most of the 10,000 people who lived near Vesuvius at the time probably survived. But the scenario would play out much differently today, possibly leaving millions of people homeless and forced to resettle elsewhere, in many cases, permanently. 6. Life would be severely disrupted. Those who managed to survive an eruption among the 3 million people living in or near the red zone would face devastating consequences. Countless homes would be completely buried in ash, much like the ancient village of Pompeii was back in 79 AD. Nearby areas that are not destroyed would lose electricity, running water, and access to transportation for months or longer. An unprecedented number of evacuees would be stuck in temporary housing, including people whose homes were destroyed and those who are unable to return home for months or even years. With so many people living in closer than usual proximity to one another, disease could spread more easily, and at least some survivors would suffer from respiratory issues from inhaling volcanic ash. Medical care would likely be more difficult to access, food may be scarce, and starvation could become a problem. Not to mention, almost all the evacuees would lose their jobs for a variety of reasons, including because their workplace was destroyed, because they've been displaced far away from their job, and because there would be other, more pressing matters at hand. But even people living far outside the red zone would feel the effects of the disaster. In fact, if Vesuvius erupted, it would impact pretty much the entire world in some way. As ash blanketed the sky, air traffic and shipping throughout Europe would grind to a months-long halt, disrupting everything from travel to the supply of goods and the global economy. Again, why would you risk living near something so dangerous? 5. Climate change. A big enough explosion from Vesuvius would likely trigger climate change. In many places, the sky would go dark for some time, and soon enough, the covering of ash blowing, blocking out the sun's rays, could cause global temperatures to drop. At the very least, these changes would disrupt agriculture in some places, causing crop failure and food shortages. People experienced one such scenario after the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia. Ash shot as high as 25 miles into the atmosphere and rained down for weeks, causing global temperatures to drop by an average of 5 degrees for several months. It was the only eruption in modern history to rate a 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, and people as far away as Western Europe and Eastern North America experienced crop failures, famine, and starvation. The effects were as far-reaching as the US and other parts of the Northern Hemisphere. 1816 came to be known as the year without a summer. The Mount Tambora disaster was the most destructive volcanic eruption to happen in the last 10,000 years, and some experts believe that a Vesuvius eruption could be just as devastating. Not only do they think that the volcano is overdue for an eruption, it sits atop a massive 154 square mile layer of magma that's been accumulating since the last time it erupted in 1944. It's entirely possible that the effects would be similar to and nearly as severe as those of the Mount Tambora eruption. 4. Economic despair. To say that Italy's economy would be hard hit by a massive eruption is an understatement. Not factoring in any long-term housing and other needs for refugees, the disaster alone would cost a minimum of $20 billion. Local businesses would be destroyed, and people who work in or around the red zone would lose their jobs. The region's tourism industry, which is one of its primary sources of revenue, would cease to exist indefinitely. Survivors with jobs outside the red zone might face logistical, health, and other challenges that prevent them from continuing to work. Hundreds of thousands of people, or more, would become government-dependent overnight, and the already struggling Italian economy would face the additional financial strain of having to provide temporary housing and basic provisions, like food and medical care, for everyone affected by the disaster. People affected by the disaster would probably have less money to contribute to the consumer economy. At the very least, their priorities would change, and purchases of non-essential and luxury goods would decline as they focus on rebuilding their lives. The European and global economies would also suffer amid widespread shipping and travel disruptions. 3. Lost history. When you think about all the work that's gone into unburying Pompeii, which is still being excavated to this day, it's shocking to realize that the site could be instantaneously reburied if and when the next big eruption occurs. The Italian government would be faced with two choices: leave the area around Mount Vesuvius covered in ash, or excavate it. Considering the overwhelming costs associated with evacuating, rescuing, and providing ongoing aid to survivors, it's highly unlikely that authorities would opt to dig up any of the modern or ancient towns anytime soon after an eruption. While ash seems to be great at preserving ruins, it could effectively block access to Pompeii and other ancient sites for decades or longer, until or unless it's deemed feasible and worthwhile to excavate. There's still plenty we haven't learned about these villages amid ongoing digs. If they were once again swallowed in ash, we would no longer have the option of seeing them firsthand, and research would stop in its tracks. Our experience of Pompeii would be limited to photographs, written materials, and any artifacts that have been removed and relocated elsewhere. Experts claim that Vesuvius is overdue for a massive eruption, so it might be a good idea to go and visit these historic sites while we still can. There's no guarantee that this alleged impending disaster will happen during our lifetimes, but there's also no guarantee that it won't. 2. Medical crises. If Mount Vesuvius erupted, not all survivors would emerge unscathed. There would undoubtedly be injuries, and many people would likely suffer from respiratory problems due to inhaling ash. Diseases would spread more easily in cramped temporary housing, where evacuees would live in unusually close proximity to one another. Additionally, maintaining high standards of hygiene and medical treatment would be difficult in these makeshift conditions, and in the face of a skyrocketing need for care. Keeping the population healthy would be especially difficult amid the ongoing global coronavirus pandemic. Italy was one of the hardest hit countries and is still recovering from its devastating effects. Like much of the world, the country still has not reached the level of pre-COVID normalcy, and the deadly Delta variant of the virus is gaining traction even as vaccinations are on the rise. The medical consequences stemming from a volcanic eruption and the displacement of millions, especially during a pandemic, would massively burden Italy's healthcare system, coming at an immense humanitarian and economic cost. 1. Forgotten Towns. The eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD rendered the surrounding region uninhabitable for centuries to come. People had no choice but to move away, and towns that were buried like Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Estabiai were eventually forgotten about. Pompeii was not rediscovered until 1748, nearly 1,670 years after the eruption. Historical record-keeping has come a long way since then, so it's doubtful that Naples and other towns would be completely lost to history, even if they were concealed by ash. But people would probably never come back to the area not only because of the damage caused by the eruption, but because the Italian government probably wouldn't allow them to return for obvious safety reasons. And the collective memories of these towns would undoubtedly fade with time as people move on with their lives and new generations are born, leaving survivors' descendants with no physical place to visit and see firsthand. Their experiences of the places their ancestors came from would be limited to stories passed down through families, relics like photographs, and their imaginations. The ruins at Pompeii are remarkable, because it's as if they're frozen in time. Ash buried the settlement so quickly, it stopped life in its tracks. Human remains were found in the helpless positions that the victims died in, as they attempted to shield themselves from the deadly debris falling from overhead. If Naples or other surrounding towns were buried in a modern eruption and unearthed decades or centuries later, they would likely be well preserved, much like Pompeii was. In this sense, the unusually intact ruins would offer an unprecedented glimpse into the past and into the final moments before they were snuffed out. Thank you for watching. How worried are you about Mount Vesuvius? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back soon. See you next time. Bye!